Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another news and rumor review to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings for the past couple of days, some injury updates, a small trade stuff from the past couple of days, and some trade rumors involving the Blackhawks, Canucks, Flyers, Rangers, and my updated trade bait board. We'll get to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the ETEH Hockey channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. Would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your guys' opinion, although it's going to be discussed here today. So in today's video, we're going to be doing another news and rumor video. As usual, we'll start with a sign that happened for our past couple of days. So it was an interesting one, and it was another one of the Vancouver Canucks players that they acquired in the Marcus Pettersson deal. We talked about how Marcus Pettersson, I think it was last week, wound up signing a massive extension to remain with the Vancouver Canucks, be their third best defenseman on that blue line, solid defensive guy. Well, they signed the other piece they got in that trade, and that is Drew O'Connor. O'Connor, who was brought in to be a third line scoring forward, has fit in all right, already has a couple of goals in Canucks colors before the Four Nations break. Has looked really good. He was in the final year of a 2-year deal with a $925,000. He's heading for UFA status. He's a left winger. He's only 26 years old, so he's the younger side UFA guy. Well, he signs a 2-year contract extension with the AAV of $2.5 million to remain with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, this is a decent signing. It's sort of reminiscent of the Steele signing we thought just a couple of days ago. Steele signed a 2-year, $2.1 million deal to remain a bottom six forward in Dallas. This is sort of the similar thing, like I said, with Steele. I think 2.5 is a little bit pricey for a guy like Drew O'Connor. Even though he did have a really good season last year, I would have probably given him somewhere between 1.75 and 2 million, maybe 2.25. I think 2.5 is definitely a little bit too much for O'Connor, but he brings some really good depth add. He can score a couple of goals, play really well. He's a speedy guy on the third line, so I can see how the Canucks would want to do this. And as we talked about, the Canucks front office, Rutherford, Alvin, they're all former Penguins staff members, so you can see why they would want to sign him. So far, O'Connor has 2 goals in 4 games since being acquired from the Pittsburgh Penguins, after he had 6 goals and 16 points in 53 games so far earlier this year before he got dealt, after last year having 16 goals and 33 points in 79 games. So at this current point in time, he's probably on pace to have just a little bit under 30 points, so a little bit of a down year from last year. But still, he's a guy who can put you up between 25 and 40 points, can probably score at this peak probably around the 20 goal mark. So I think this could be a really good pickup there. And if O'Connor plays really well as like a third line forward in Vancouver, I think that could wind up being a really good deal. I just think it's a tiny bit too much money at this point in time. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But both pending UFAs that the Canucks got in the Marcus Pettersson deal, and Pettersson and O'Connor, have now signed extensions that will be Canucks beyond this year. So interesting sign there from our past couple of days. That was the only sign we saw from our past couple of days. Next, we'll move over to a quick injury update. When it comes to the injury updates, we only have a couple here to talk about from our past couple of days. Back over on Saturday, as we talked about in our last video, ETEH Makar did wind up missing Saturday's big matchup between Canada and the United States due to an illness, but did wind up playing over on Monday, so it's good to see that Makar was able to get back. He should be ready to go for the final over on Thursday, so that could be a really big boost there for Canada, but it was bad to see him miss that first game against the States. Then the USA had a slew of injury updates over the past couple of days. Matthew Tkachuk left Saturday's game due to lower body injury and also missed the last round robin game over on Monday against Sweden. However, he is sounding like he will play on Thursday in the final against Canada, so as much as that's not overly great news to see Tkachuk go down with an injury, it sounds like he should be alright and shouldn't miss any time. Austin Matthews missed Monday's game with an upper body injury, but could also be back for the finals, so that's really great news there. Matthews is a solid top 6 center on Team USA, so to see him probably be back is really good. Brady Tkachuk, who did play on Monday in the last round robin game, got injured with a lower body injury, but should be able to return for the final. So Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews all have recent injuries suffered over the past couple of days, but they all should be ready to go for Team USA's final game against Canada. And on top of that, Charlie McAvoy was sent to the hospital due to an upper body injury and has been ruled out for the final, so it's a horrible blow there for Team USA to lose McAvoy, who was a big piece as to why they beat the Canadians in the first game they played against each other on Saturday. So bad blow there for the Bruins to have McAvoy in the hospital, and he's probably going to miss a couple of weeks too. So just like Theodore with Vegas, this is probably going to affect the Bruins after the Four Nations face-off ends. So it's a horrible blow there for Team USA, but also a massive blow for the Bruins to lose their top defenseman for a couple of weeks. So bad blows there, as McAvoy is going to be out for the US for their final game, but it does sound like Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk Tkachuk and Austin Matthews will all play. When it comes to Team Sweden, Linus Ullmark was supposed to start against the United States in the last round robin game, but wasn't feeling too well, so he missed the last round robin game. So with Sweden now out of the tournament, he'll go back to Ottawa. Hopefully he feels all right and is able to get back into game action, but it's not great news to see him miss Sweden's last game. Utah may have Logan Cooley, who's currently dealing with lower body injury, Sean Durzi, who's dealing with a shoulder injury, Robert Bertuzzo, who's dealing with a lower body injury, and Connor Ingram, who's dealing with an upper body injury, all back when they return from the Four Nations break. So that could be a really big boost there for Utah to see the four guys who are currently injured right now, and Cooley, Durzi, Ingram, and Bertuzzo all be back in the game action. It's good to see Utah might have a fully healthy lineup coming out of the Four Nations break. And Jordan Eberle, who had missed 3 months with a pelvis injury, has been recalled from his conditioning stint and should probably return relatively shortly after the Four Nations. So that's really great news there. Eberle is the team's captain. He's a really good leader on that Kraken team. It's going to be a big boost offensively to get him back. So really great stuff there. So it sounds like Eberle will get back in the game action. So lots of intriguing injury updates from our past couple days. Good to see it. Eberle should be back, and all those Utah players should be back in the not just in future. Good to see Makar got back into the lineup, but bad news to see Brady Tkachuk down with an injury, as well as Austin Matthews, Matthew Tkachuk, and Charlie McAvoy, who's not going to play in the United States-Canada final. So bad blows there, and hopefully the States can recover from the McAvoy injury, but some interesting injury updates when it comes to Team USA, Team Canada, Utah, and Seattle. So some interesting stuff there. Going over to a small trade we saw from our past couple days. It was another low-end trade that saw future considerations be involved, and this is the trade. The trade is as follows. The Vegas Golden Knights traded Gregori Denisenko to the Nashville Predators for future consideration. So obviously Denisenko wasn't getting the best of opportunities in Vegas. The Golden Knights wanted to open up a contract slot. Didn't see much of a future with Denisenko at the NHL level, so they traded him to Nashville. So it's not too much of an ask there. Like I said, I don't see Denisenko being a really solid player on that Vegas Golden Knights team. So he'll have a fresh start where he can potentially have some more opportunity to play at the NHL level. Denisenko, who's 24 years old, he's a left winger in the final year of a 2-year deal at league minimum. He's a Group 6 UFA, so he might be a UFA at the end of the year. He might be an RFA. We'll have to wait and see. As a former first-round pick, he was taken 15th overall back in the 2018 draft by the Florida Panthers. He was lost a year or two ago on waivers by Florida to Vegas, and even in Vegas, he hasn't really been able to crack the NHL roster. 2 years ago, he played in Florida, having 3 assists in 18 games, and also had 36 points in 56 AHL games. Last year in Henderson with the AHL affiliate for Vegas, he put 20 goals and 56 points in 65 games. He was a very productive player, but had no points in 6 NHL games. So far this year, had 10 goals and 24 points in 42 AHL games, having no points in 1 NHL game. So he wasn't getting very much opportunities at the NHL level, so he gets a fresh start. We know that Nashville could definitely use some more bottom 6 help. If Denisenko can find his role in Nashville, that could be a really good pickup there for the Predators. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but it's a small trade, a pretty insignificant one, but one I think that could benefit the Predators in time. As young former first-round pick Gregori Denisenko has been moved by Vegas to Nashville for future consideration. So it's an interesting small trade we saw from our past couple of days. There have been no waiver updates from our past couple of days, so those are all the news pieces we got to talk about from our past few days. Next, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So in today's video, we got a couple of trade rumors to talk about. We're going to start over here with the Philadelphia Flyers. According to David Pagnotta, he recently revealed the sort of asking price the Philadelphia Flyers are currently asking for Scott Laughton. We've talked about how there's been a big price tag on Scott Laughton, and if they wouldn't have that asking price be met, they wouldn't move Laughton. Well, according to David Pagnotta, the Flyers want a first-round pick or a prospect that's of similar value for Laughton. So that is a steep asking price, as I said before. Laughton's a really good player. He's a versatile guy, can play center, can play wing, has that playoff mentality, can be a really good player in the playoffs, signed for this year and next year at $3 million. But he's a third-line forward mostly. He can play second-line minutes if need be, but he's a third-line player mostly. A first-round pick for a third-line guy who signed for this year and next year is a really steep asking price. I could see like a second-round pick and decent prospect for Laughton be something that a lot of teams will be putting up an asking price for, but I just don't see any teams putting up a first-round pick. Now, Pagnotta says that they could, once again, hold on to Laughton, given the fact he's still got term left on his deal. They don't have to move him, but the longer that they do, the lower the trade value will go, because as of next year, if they trade him at next year's trade deadline, it's only a rental as opposed to a guy who can be with them for this year and next year. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. I think there's a possibility we could see a Laughton move. There might be 1 or 2 teams who are crazy enough to give a first-round pick for Laughton. I personally don't think anyone should do it. I think they should wait until the asking price lowers a little bit. Like, I think a think-around pick and a decent decent prospects, a lot more of a palatable thing to get for Scott Laughton than a first-round pick. But we're going to have to wait and see. The Flyers have made it obvious that they really want a first-round pick for Laughton, and if they don't get it, there's a very likely chance Laughton will stay in Philadelphia beyond the trade deadline. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But according to David Pagnotta, the asking price for Scott Laughton is a first-round pick or a prospect of similar value. So we'll have to wait and see on if he does get dealt or not. Next, going over to the Chicago Blackhawks. When it comes to Chicago, we had some recent updates when it comes to the Blackhawks and defenseman Seth Jones. According to Frank Seravalli, he says that he's been hearing Seth Jones' name in the trade rumor mill as well over the past little while. Now, Seth Jones is an interesting one. I think he signed for 4 or 5 more years at $9.5 million. So that's a really big asking price. But we know that the Hawks are not going to be competing for a playoff spot at the very least in the next year or two. So Jones, by the time they're ready to compete for a playoff spot, he'll be a very older defenseman and wouldn't be really lining up with the timeline that the Blackhawks are currently on trajectory with. So there's a very likely chance, a lot of people have said there's a possibility Jones could maybe be moved if they could find the right ask. And Seravalli definitely says that with the cap going up majorly over the next 2-3 years, it might make it easier and more palatable to take on Seth Jones. And if the Hawks were willing to retain a little bit of money, like let's say they retain $1.5 to $2 million, like Seth Jones at $7.5 to $8 million is a really good steal, because in fact he's still a solid top pair, top 4 defenseman for a team who can put up offensive numbers. So we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be an interesting name. I wouldn't be overly shocked if we had Jones be moved maybe more in the offseason, because that feels more like an offseason move to me. I'm not sure if it's something that we'll be seeing before a deadline, but Seravalli definitely says that he's hearing Seth Jones' name out there and wouldn't be overly shocked if with the cap going up he does get moved. And I've also heard the one team maybe to be potentially in the market for Seth Jones would be Columbus. I know the Blue Jackets have a very young blue line, so the team who traded him to Chicago, could they trade back for him? Possibly, if they could work out with the right deal. I'm not exactly sure what the Hawks would want for Jones. My guess would be like a first-round pick and maybe a decent prospect. Like, I don't think they're going to get too much for Jones given his high cap hits, but he's still a really good defenseman. If they can work out something, maybe they try and figure that out. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Seth Jones, as he's apparently a name we have to watch out for on the trade market. So keep your eye on Chicago and Seth Jones. Next, going over to the Vancouver Canucks. When it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, we've had a couple of reports around Brock Boeser. First, Jim Parsons of the Hockey News recently said that the Vancouver Canucks and Brock Boeser are currently not close on an extension, and it doesn't sound like anything's sort of being worked on in the right direction right now. Gregori recently said on TSN that it sounds like Boeser's going to be looking for some big money this offseason with the cap going up. And on top of that, Rick Dhaliwal said that after the Canucks signed Marcus Pearson, it might have been a real slap to the face to Boeser, because Boeser's been waiting for an extension for about 7 months now, and Pettersson, a week after getting acquired, got his new extension and is in Vancouver. So things don't look good right now for Brock Boeser staying in Vancouver. It sounds like they're really far apart on a new extension. It sounds like Boeser might be a little bit angry that Pettersson got signed before he did. It sounds like with the cap going up, Boeser could command a big sort of ask. Like, he's a former 40 goal scorer, only a year removed from it. So if he could go to another team, I wouldn't be overly shocked if a team will be willing to pay him like $7.5 to $8.5 million to be a goal scorer in their top 6. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with Boeser. There's been a lot of recent rumblings saying that there's more and more traction gaining, that they're not close on an extension, and that Boeser might be a trade candidate before the trade deadline. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. Personally, I don't think the Canucks should trade Boeser because he's a really good weapon, and I think he should be remaining in Vancouver, at least for this upcoming playoff run. But then again, you risk losing him as a UFA, and would the Canucks really want to do that? I'm not exactly sure. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but it does sound like Boeser and the Canucks are not close on an extension, and there's a very likely chance they'll get moved in the not too distant future. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the New York Rangers, according to Larry Brooks, he mentioned a potential trade proposal. This isn't something that's being mentioned, it's just something that he speculates on, and he says that he thinks that the Rangers should do, and he says that the Rangers should trade Alexis Lafreniere. Now, he says Lafreniere had a really good season last year, but this year hasn't really replicated those big numbers, only has, I think, like 25-30 points in like 50 games, which isn't anywhere close to where he had last year. He's on pace for a down year following last year's career season. So Larry Brooks says that even though they did sign to a long-term extension this offseason, he says that they should trade him, and he says that they should trade him to Anaheim time, and they should have a return of Trevor Zegras and one of their young defensemen, maybe like a Minyakov or Lunio or something like that, one of their young blue line prospects. So that would be an interesting trade proposal. It's not something that's being discussed on right now by Rangers and Ducks, just something that Larry Brooks thinks that those two teams should consider. Like, if Lafreniere is to go to the Anaheim Ducks already have a whole bunch of really good centers, like Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish. Imagine a guy like Alexei Lafreniere on that team with a lot of talent in a top 6 role. That could really benefit Lafreniere. And when it comes to the New York Rangers, you know, they don't have a whole bunch of really good young offensive talent. Add Zegras to a team that has a whole bunch of superstars like Kreider, Zibanejad, Trocheck, Miller. Add Lafreniere to that top 6, it becomes really lethal. And Zegras, I think, does have a little bit more production than Lafreniere does at the NHL level, even though he hasn't had overly great stretch over the past couple of years, having his season derailed due to injuries. So it's an interesting trade proposal, not something I think that will happen. Again, in fact, I don't think the Rangers are open to moving Lafreniere right now, but it's an interesting concept, and I do think it would help the Ducks. I think the Ducks would be way more open to making that sort of a move than the Rangers would, but we'll have to wait and see. It's a possibility, at least. So we're going to have to wait and see on if Larry Brooks is onto something here, or if this is just him speculating on something. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to my trade bait list. I recently just posted a new trade bait board on my blog. I'll link it down in the description below. You guys can go check out the full 30-player trade bait list that I just posted. I'm just gonna give you the top 5 on my trade bait list right now. So the 5th player on my trade bait list right now is Dylan Cousins. I think there's a possibility Cousins will get moved. We know the center group on the trade market is not overly big, and I think that with the Sabres looking to make some shake-up moves before a trade deadline, I do think there's a possibility we could see Cousins get moved. He's the name you have to watch out for. Noah Dobson, we recently heard some speculation that for the right price, Dobson could get moved. I think it really will depend on if Lou Lamoriello really wants to pay Dobson the big bucks in the offseason or not. I think if he doesn't want to pay big bucks in the offseason to Dobson, making him like an $8-9 million defenseman, I think there's a very likely chance that Lamoriello may consider a trade of Dobson before the trade deadline, so that's why he's 4th on my list. Third on my trade bait list is the person who we just talked about, Brock Boeser. I think with the more and more speculation coming up that they're not close to an extension, there's a very likely chance he could get moved. I'm not exactly sure what the return will be for the Canucks, but I do think more and more speculation is increasing, and I do think there's a very likely possibility that Boeser gets dealt, which is why I third on my trade bait list. Second on my trade bait list is Hawks forward Ryan Donato, a really likely trade candidate, only making $2 million, having a career season, can be a solid third line depth scorer for a lot of teams. If the Hawks were willing to retain $1 million, that would make it a massive return that they could be able to have. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that, but I definitely do think Donato will get moved, which is why I second on my trade bait list. And then my new number 1 trade bait list player is Brad Marchand. I know it's starting to sound less and less likely like he will get moved, but there were a lot of reports about a week or two ago that were saying that Marchand was going to get dealt, so I still think it's a possibility, not a very likely one, but we're gonna have to wait and see, and that's why he tops my trade bait list. So definitely, I'll let you guys thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. That's all I'm gonna talk about for today. What are your opinions on all of this? Do you think I'm right on my trade bait list? And I'd love to hear guys' thoughts on the full trade bait list. If you guys could check out my blog down in the description below. What are your opinion on my 30-player trade bait list? Do the Rangers and Ducks pull off a Lafreniere-Zegras swap? And if so, what sort of a team wins that deal? Do the Hawks move Seth Jones? And if so, where could he go? And what sort of return could Chicago get? Do the Canucks move Brock Boeser? Do they sign him? And if they do move him before a trade deadline, where could he go? Definitely hear your thoughts on that. What do you think about Scott Laughton? Is a first-round pick a really good ask for the Flyers, or do you think they should lower that ask? Definitely hear your thoughts on that. Plus the small trade, injury updates, and signing from our past couple of days. Definitely hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. I want to like this video. If you're to subscribe below, thank you all your support. Know to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. I also have a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. And can I see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.